This is the greatest racehorse of all time. And this is Sham, who came in second place during the iconic Kentucky Derby of 1973. You might think coming in second place is underwhelming, but what if I told you that in just about any other year, Sham would have easily taken first? In this remarkable race, Sham finished in under 2 minutes, a remarkable achievement that only 3 horses have ever managed in the history of the Kentucky Derby. What adds to the drama of this race is the aftermath. Shortly after racing, Sham was found with blood pouring from his mouth. Despite this severe condition, he still managed to finish the race incredibly close to the winner. In fact, Sham was bleeding so bad, his groomer had to be taken away because they fainted from all the blood. It took a painstaking 45 minutes to cauterize Sham's gums to stop the bleeding. You might wonder why he was bleeding so much. Aside from finishing a grueling race, Sham's heart definitely played a role. You see, his heart weighed 19 pounds, which is twice the size of an average racehorse. This extraordinary size is known in the realm of champion racehorsing as the X Factor gene, a rare trait that breeders seek fervently. This exceptional trait goes back to a legendary racehorse named Man o' War. He's often regarded as one of the best racehorses in history. He's kind of like the Michael Jackson of horse racing. An interesting twist in Sham's story is it started kind of remarkably. 83 years after Man o' War was born, Sham was born just 10 minutes off Man o' War's exact birth time. It's believed that both Sham and Secretariat, the greatest racehorse of all time, inherited this legendary X Factor gene from Man o' War. But aside from this remarkable coincidence, Sham exhibited traits of a leading racehorse right from the start. To understand this, in the world of horse racing, the horse's desire to race is important. Emotions influence their nerve impulses, critical for maintaining a fluid motion during racing. Thus, any negative emotions can actually restrict their range of motion, slowing them down. But from Sham's first training session, the trainer observed this horse was remarkably relaxed and eager. They said, "I can't remember when such a calm yearling entered my training paddock for the first time." These early observations hinted at Sham's bright future as a racehorse, yet the path to proving himself on the track was still far away. It's important to understand that only 3% of horses end up winning multiple races. So the likelihood of Sham becoming a champion racehorse is extremely unlikely. Owners, jockeys, and trainers have to recognize this sport as a gamble. And given such the slim odds of winning, most don't make a lot of money from it. But for the ones that do, it is remarkable. Typically when a horse wins, 80% of the money is given to the owner, 10% to the trainer, and 10% to the jockey. The cost of maintaining the horse, however, are shared amongst those parties. This makes horse racing a winner-takes-all type sport. But luckily for Sham, it wouldn't take long before he started earning money. Although his first race started slow, he ended up finishing in 3rd place, winning $960. Shortly after, a second race followed, where he rose to 2nd place after a bad start, earning $1,760. However, he had yet to learn the satisfaction of winning. It seems as if he didn't understand where the race ended and why it was crucial to get there first. During his 3rd race, he was doing extremely well, but he became distracted on the final turn and ended up coming in 3rd again. The trainer admitted that Sham was definitely still learning, but he showed that he was capable of taking the lead when necessary. This early phase in his career, marked by a mix of promise and youthful mistakes, showcased his potential at becoming great. But unfortunately, on September 14th, tragedy struck when the owner suddenly passed away. Due to some financial concerns, in his will, he decided to sell some of his thoroughbreds. Sham, not having won any races, was put up for auction. But this is where Sham's life would change forever. He would be purchased by Sigmund Sommer for $200,000, which was the 2nd highest price paid that day for the auction. However, it's unlikely Sigmund knew at the time he purchased one of the greatest racehorses of all time, because the very next day, 85 other horses were sold. With so few horses having the ability to win, let alone win multiple races, Sigmund likely purchased Sham on a hunch. However, it was Sham's next race under his new owner where he would prove himself not to be a regular racehorse. It's understandable Sigmund thought, Sham wouldn't amount to much because he didn't even show up for his first race. Despite wet and rainy conditions, he persevered and won his first race, earning $4,800. In the words of a late jockey, George Iceman Wolf, "You don't have to tell a good horse when they win or lose, they know." It wasn't just the fact that he won the race, but how he won it. Because after the race, Sham was immediately put into a peak conditioning program. This intensive training regimen was designed to maximize his physical potential to prepare him for the most prestigious races in the world, the Kentucky Derby. Sham's new trainer, Pancho, decided after watching Sham run that 1 mile race, he believed the horse truly had a shot at the Kentucky Derby. A few months later, Sham was ready for his next race, but there was a challenge. Sham had to take his first airplane ride to get there. To make matters more complicated, they didn't use any horse tranquilizers or drugs, in fear it might complicate things mid-flight. As you can imagine, Sham was nervous boarding the aircraft, trying to hear shouts from his trainer over the sound of jet engines, something no horse would hear in the wild. His uncontrollable urges to escape had him pull at the reins, forcing blood from his mouth. This was a very uncomfortable process for everyone involved, but once Sham was airborne, he soon became comforted by the hum of the aircraft engine. When Sham landed, he found himself at Los Angeles International Airport, the last place you'd expect a horse to be. He was then carted off to Santa Ana Park for his next race. But this would be a significant moment. It was at this race Sham would be introduced to his new jockey, Laffit Pincay. Reigning from Panama, Pincay had a lot of ambition as a young man. He originally wanted to be a baseball player, but quickly found out he was too short to play in the major leagues, so he decided to switch to horseback riding. However, learning in Panama was difficult.
What do you mean?
Good question, I'll elaborate. He was forced to learn riding horse bareback, and without having a saddle, made things extremely difficult from the get-go. But this experience would shape Pincay into an amazing horseman. But it was around this time he started to get into arguments with his mom. She caught Pincay fasting when he was only 15 years old. This uncovers a gruesome reality behind jockeys. You see, most jockeys try and ride as much as possible, as many horses as they can just to survive. They're trying to make enough money to cover their expenses, but malnutrition, anorexia are plaguing them. They have to starve themselves as much as possible in order to maintain the requirement of being 110 to 115 pounds. This ridiculous weight requirement for any man has created a culture of bulimic behaviors. Many overeat, then immediately throw up, which has become an acceptable ritual. In fact, they do it so much they've actually created slang for it, called flipping. On top of this, being a jockey was extremely competitive. Most were in a state of stress and tension from undereating, leading to many arguments and even fistfights. Some would turn to laxatives and alcohol if they didn't make weight, because if they didn't ride, then they didn't get paid. To make matters worse, when Pincay moved to the US, he didn't know a lick of English, requiring a translator to speak to most trainers and owners. However, all of that was set aside when Pincay met Sham. So here they were in the gate together, ready to make their debut. But when the gate swung open, Pincay and Sham found themselves in last place. But as fate would have it, in that same race, they would win by 15 lengths. This crazy comeback was an immediate confirmation that there was something special between Pincay and Sham. Pincay attributed most of his success to superstition. In fact, he would usually wear his underwear inside out as a pre-racing ritual. This practice came from the advice of his mother, who believed it would ward off any negative energy from people who wanted him to fail. Regardless, it worked. They proved it was possible. This first place earned Sham and his owner $4,950. Sham then went on to win the next race, which had a bigger purse of $19,800 at the Santa Catalina Stakes. It was around this time Secretariat was beginning to make waves in the racing community. People were already comparing Secretariat to the legendary horse Man o' War. With the Kentucky Derby approaching, Secretariat was the favorite going into it. And when that day finally came, there was a record-setting attendance of 134,476 people. But the most unusual thing about this race was the start. One of the racehorses at the gate had issues spooking other horses. With horses being herd creatures, when one of them is nervous, emotional, it gets around to every horse extremely fast. and this proved an issue for Sham. As the gate opened, Sham slammed his mouth on the starting gate, dislodging 2 of his teeth. Pincay, unaware of the severity of the situation, noticed Sham was struggling more than usual from the gate, and when racing, he knew something was wrong when a light splatter of blood showed up on his sleeve. But unable to truly assess the damage, he knew he had to keep going. It was on the last corner of this race, Sham was in the lead over Secretariat. However, as we know from the beginning, this unfortunately wouldn't be Sham's race. Secretariat would end up winning. Him and his team were dumbfounded, in a state of shock from what had happened. Little did they know, Pincay and Sham had just become the unluckiest duo in horse racing history, being beaten by not only the greatest racehorse of all time, but with a record-setting Kentucky Derby run. But it was only a couple minutes later when Sham's mouth injury was discovered, leading some to question if that horse wasn't nervous from the very beginning, if Sham would have won the race. Sham ran exceptionally well as one of 3 horses to run below 2 minutes for the Kentucky Derby. The other 2 horses being Secretariat in that race and Monarchos in 2001. Although the team was disappointed, Sham would earn $25,000, clearly dominating the rest of the field, and would have easily taken home the Kentucky Derby in just about any other year. But Sham and his team couldn't be heartbroken for too long, because the next race, Preakness Stakes, was already at hand. Secretariat was the favorite going into the race, with Sham right behind him. An article in the Thoroughbred Record summed it up well. Give a super horse a super rival though, and the turnstiles will sing. Right from the start of the race, Pincay immediately felt something was off with Sham. He felt as if Sham wasn't running freely, perhaps having limited range of motion. Trying to decipher and diagnose the issue on the run. Was it Sham's takeoff? Was it his flight? Was it his landing? What part of the stride was Sham struggling with? He couldn't tell. All he knew, something was off. It was about halfway through the race where Pincay and Sham collided with the rail. When Sham finished in second place, earning his team $30,000, they were heartbroken. Although they won more than the Kentucky Derby, Pincay mentioned the rail issue with his trainer, but the trainer rebutted, saying, "I don't want to make any more excuses. No more excuses." There's only a little bit more time until Sham entered Belmont Stakes. Little did anyone know this would be a legendary race, both for the achievements made and the devastation witnessed. Secretariat would end up winning the race by 25 lengths, setting a US record by beating the previous best by a 2 full seconds. Unfortunately for Sham, he would come in last place. From the beginning of the race, Pincay noticed his stride was off and uncovered something significant. After the race, it was discovered that Sham had broken his cannon bone, a devastating injury that would lead to his retirement. He spent his remaining years on a farm where he would pass away at the age of 23 from a heart attack. It was after his death they discovered Sham's heart weighed 19 pounds, twice the size of an average horse, proving Sham was indeed a legend with that X Factor gene. Though Sham never won the Kentucky Derby, he is the greatest horse to never claim that title. While this video ends on a sad note, there is another story with a much brighter future. It involves a basketball player named Giannis. If you need to lift your spirits, check out this video right here. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one.